But their employees are so nice. You know, you go up there, and if you go to any other kind of fast food place, you hear this on the little screen monitor, whatever. Taco Bell's absolute worst. Double check anything you order at Taco Bell because it will not be right. And then we just broadcast that to many, many people. But you know, you go to Chick-fil-A, it's, may I take your order? How can I serve you today, sir? And when you get muddled up or somebody in the back seat yells something and it's all crazy, no problem, we'll get it all straightened out. Have a wonderful day. You know, there are times, even though I don't necessarily am a big fan of their food, there are times I go there in the middle of the day just to have somebody talk to me nice. Well, that's not exactly true, but you know, it's refreshing. It's refreshing because there is a part of me that really thinks that manners and politeness in our society has taken a back seat. Let me hear that again. Thank you. I really, okay, everywhere, right? It's taken a back seat. You know, I held the door open for someone the other day. I do that. I try to do that. I was raised to do that, especially for women or for ladies or for children. Or, you know, I held the door open and the woman was like, she was like stunned. She hesitated. She didn't know really what to do. And as she hesitated, somebody else blasted right in front of her. True story. Or you go somewhere and the clerk is so busy talking to the other clerk or looking at their cell phone, it's like you're an interruption. It's like you're an interruption. You know, it's like, get out of my way so I can get back to something important like looking at Facebook. You know, you're oblivious to them. And so there's this part of me that says that, you know, politeness and manners has begun to take a back seat. Now, I know that I am overgeneralizing because not everybody is that way. But it does seem as though it has increased, reminding me that manners and politeness are not things we are born with. They are things we don't inherit them. They are things we learn and practice, or we don't. We either own them and exhibit them, or we don't. You have to, and to do that, you have to believe that they're important. You can tell someone's character by how they treat you or how they treat others. You know, the old saying your parents had, treat others the way you would like to be treated. Which is real easy to say, but very challenging to do. Let's be honest. We all have our moments. Well, if politeness and good behavior are values and morals and skills that are taught and learned, I would submit to you that faith is as well. That faith is not something you are born with. Faith is not something that you have in your DNA. Faith is something you learn from your parents, your spouse, your friends. It is something you see. You can't really be taught. You know, you have a child, and the first time you play with a child and you toss them in the air, you know, their face just goes, and then you catch them. And they want to do it again, right? Because they learn to trust you. They have faith in you. It is something we learn. It is not something we are born with. And it's something we choose to practice. It doesn't happen by accident. Faith does not happen by accident. And we either invest in growing it as we experience it, or we don't. And we rely on others in learning faith and experiencing faith. We rely as much on other people, on you folks, as you may rely on me. I mean, when we all have those weaknesses, those down times, those doubts, when life is overwhelming and our health causes us to struggle, we don't have enough. And so we reach out. It's just natural at those points to open up and to reach out for something, you know, when we go to the dark side, to reach out. And where we reach can make all the difference in the world. You know, you reach in the wrong direction, it's going to take you down this path. You reach in this direction, it takes you down this path. And it can make all the difference in the world. So in our gospel this morning, we have the disciples reaching out. We have them reaching out to Jesus. They are on their way to Jerusalem, the last part of his life, the last stage of his ministry. They're on the way. And our text translates the Greek, so help our faith grow. And I suspect they translated it that way because it ties in really well with the mustard seed thing that Luke follows it with. But if you read it in the Greek, as I would, if you read it in the Greek, I don't think that's really strong enough. I think the Greek really says to us, literally, the disciples are saying, so Jesus, give us faith. Give us faith, which is different than help our faith to grow. Give us faith. And what I would tell you is that's impossible. That's impossible. Because personal faith is not something that's transferable. It is developed, it is modeled, it is owned, it is learned. And it comes when we allow our life experiences to intersect with what we say we believe and value and begin to practice. You know, I don't care what anybody says, you can't learn to play a sport by watching it on TV. You may learn about it, but you can't learn it by watching it on TV or playing it on a video game. It's not the same. That's why it's a virtual reality. It's not reality. Faith's the same way. You must engage it and practice it. And it doesn't matter how good the people are that you watch do it. You can emulate them, but they can't give you their skills. They can't do it. So faith becomes a choice that we practice and put into action. And our faith, it doesn't matter what others think or what others say or tell us our faith should be. What matters is what our faith is to us. And faith is one of those things you can't look at. I don't think you can look at it in the short perspective. I think you have to look at it in a long perspective, because everybody here, in the short perspective, we have our moments of doubt and fear and weakness and shortcoming, right? But when you look at it in a long perspective, there are times you look back in your life and you say, I don't know how I got through that, except by faith. You know, you can't preach faith to somebody. You can talk about it, you can tell about it, you can illustrate it, but you can't preach it. You have to seek to practice and experience it, which we do and we model for one another. Years ago, one of my pastoral mentors, a man I still think was one of the great unsung preachers of the United Church of Christ, Fred Edmonds, had a church in Fort Collins, Colorado. It was in the mid-'80s, probably 85, 86, somewhere around there, and a university church, and he happened to have a student in the church, student and their family in the church, who were Iranian, and they were being deported at that time by the government. And the real problem of their deportation, as they were working through it, is they had a young daughter, a toddler, who had had an illness and had been in a blood transfusion and contracted AIDS. Now, the complication in that is if you have AIDS and you go to Iran, you're put to death. That's the law. So the family went to Fred, and Fred talked to the congregation. I remember it's the 80s, and said, is there anybody who would take this child so they could go back to their homeland and work things out and try to bring her in or make some accommodations to fix this out? Got no takers. Nobody wanted to risk that at that time. And so Fred and his wife took her in. And they took her in, and I remember seeing him with her as she walked. I remember seeing her with him as she was eventually pushed in a stroller. I remember the last time seeing them in a shopping mall at Christmas time, him carrying her weeks before she died. And what I remember most of all is thinking to myself, I want that kind of faith. I want what he's got. He can't give it to me, but there's that desire when you see it acted out, when you see it lived out, that is so profound that you say, I want that in me. That's what I'm talking about. You know, every coach knows that the way you win games is to get all your players to buy into your system. To cease, thinking that they're the show and to buy into the system. And what that really means is not merely that they trust the play that is sent in, but they learn to trust one another. That's really what it's about. They trust that if we all do our part and we all use and operate at the top level of our skills, then we all win, and it works. I think that's how it is with faith. I think that's how it is with Christ. It's not that we become him. You can't become him, and he can't make us be him. But in order to grow our faith, we measure what we do by his example, which is a choice, and it's not an easy choice. Okay, I can forgive you when you wrong me once, but 7 times in a day? Give me a break. I'm going to Chick-fil-A. That's where I'm going. 7 times in a day, I'm going to Chick-fil-A. Jesus asked some pretty tough stuff. Love your enemy. Forgive those who wrong you. Help those who are undeserving of your help. I don't want to do that. Nonetheless, he calls us to do that. And where we go in life is determined by what model, what example we follow, what's the map we place before ourselves. We make those choices all the time. And sometimes our good choices reap fruits right away, good benefits, and other times it takes years and years and years of hard work until our faith pays off. But when it begins to work, that seed grows, and it grows not merely in those outside you, it begins to grow in you as you see life differently, you do life differently, and the rest of it doesn't matter because you know you're on the right path. But let me go back to my beginning point. My faith is my faith. And it's my faith because it's based on my experiences, my relationships, my challenges, my failures, my successes, my strengths, my weaknesses, and I can't give it to you. I can't give you my faith, which doesn't make it better or worse, right or wrong. It just means that it is the intersection of me as I struggle with the gospel and I struggle with my struggles. You've got to do the same. You see? You can't clone Christians. You can't clone them. It is a personal journey. And that's what Jesus is doing for his disciples here as they falter and they say, give it to us. He says, let me tell you what God will do for you. God will take whatever you offer and God will give you enough. And God will give you not only enough, but God will give you more. More than enough. And it's all about, as we journey ahead, how we bring the light of Christ to bear on the opportunities that we have to live, give, and serve on our personal journey of life. A few years back, people have said over the last 5 years that I should share this story again. Nancy, you're one of them. You didn't know that, but you are. Aren't you glad you came to church? The story of when Jeannie and I was on sabbatical, we were in Egypt, and we climbed Mount Sinai. The place, or at least the mountain supposedly, that Moses got the 10 Commandments on. And we chose, the guides climb it twice a day, believe it or not, but we chose to climb it at night so that we could be at the top when the sun rose. Now, this is a 7,500-foot climb with 3,700 stairs. And I use the term stairs loosely. Rocks, really, in the dark. And so, we did a lot of it on a camel. I'm not sure I recommend the camel, but that's what we did for a portion of it. Beautiful night, 10,000 stars out, and behind us a line of flashlights as far as you could see as people were walking up. And we got to a certain place. You had to trust the camel because our guide, Mito, our Bedouin guide, just took off into the dark. I don't know where he went. He said, I'll meet you near the top, and he was gone into the dark. And the camel, of course, walks on the edge of the cliff as it goes up. But true to his word, he met us at what they call the stairs of penitence, which truly you repent even thinking about doing them at this point in your life. But you're at the stairs of penitence, and you start walking up to that final peak. Still in the dark. Well, I did pretty well until my left leg began to fatigue, and it was probably the early signs, though I didn't know it, of the onset of a physical ailment. And it's very dangerous in the dark, on rocks, near cliffs, when you begin to lose your balance, or you might stumble and fall. And it was at one of those precarious moments that something quite moving and inspiring at that time occurred, as I felt a hand reach out and grab underneath my arm, and I could tell by the grasp and the roughness of the hand, it was not my wife's, it was my guide, my Bedouin guide, Mitos. And at that moment he said, "Don't worry, I will walk with you. Hold my hand. I will get you to the top, even if I have to carry you." Different backgrounds. Our worlds could not have been farther apart, different paths, experiences between us, but at that moment, both our eyes, our sight, committed to the same goal and reaching the same place, making it to the top together. That's how faith works. You know, you can't teach that. You can't write about that. You just experience that. They're just faith. You know it's going to happen. Even with the smallest amount of belief, you know it's going to happen. That's how our individual faith grows, not by measuring or judging one another, saying, well, you don't have faith, or yours is not like. That's not what Jesus says here. He says, just offer what you got. But by sharing who we are with each other in moments of failure as well as success, maybe even more so in times of doubt and fear. For as the Apostle Paul says, when we are weak, then we are strong. We are strong in Christ, we're strong in each other, and we are stronger in our personal core beliefs. And like the politeness at Chick-fil-A that you go back for, you say, I want some of that. I want that in my life. I want it. I want it given to me. I want to be able to somehow give it to others. It feels good. It makes a difference. It helps you to believe again. And little by little, as we engage and disengage and re-engage, it grows. It grows. Do you remember that song from the 70s, It Only Takes a Spark? Anybody here a Methodist? Methodists were real big on singing this song. Remember? There you go. Yeah, there's a Methodist for you right there. Huh? It only takes a spark. Do you remember it? Nobody? It only takes a spark to get a fire going, and soon all those around are warmed up in its glowing. That's how it is with God's love. Once you've experienced it, you'll spread God's love to everyone you want to pass it on. May it be so with our faith.